Welcome to the Gourds and Pomegranates podcast, talking common sense for church communications. Here's Hannah and Joe.
So it's time for another Gourds and Pomegranates podcast. I'm Joe, and along with Hannah, we want to share some thoughts to help churches to communicate with those around you. As we're both Christian professionals who work with churches, we want to share some of our experience and hopefully some wisdom as well. But with a real emphasis on keeping things grounded, helping those in churches that maybe don't feel hugely confident with their comms, or perhaps just getting started and feeling really overwhelmed with the options out there. Churches that don't have huge resources or teams of volunteers to handle a website and publicity and all those things, we get that, we see you, and we really want to help you and equip you to do your part in sharing the gospel in your communities. So obviously, as churches and organisations that have this focus on Christ, we want to share a message of God's love and God's peace. So this idea of a mission and a goal for your comms, that's something we addressed in a last episode, talking about what churches often get wrong with communications and obviously some pointers on how to do things with purpose. So in this episode, we're going to give you some pointers on how to deal with what is an unfortunate reality of being active online, and particularly on social media. And that's the issue of negative comments and how to respond to them or deal with them appropriately. So first of all, Hannah, what exactly do we mean when we're talking about negative comments?
So actually, there probably is like a dictionary definition for it, but we have sort of summarized it as when we as online and social media users receive messages that might be public or private that either misunderstand, misrepresent, or even intentionally are posted to try to get a reaction, typically a negative one, that can result in us feeling very frustrated and often actually quite upset. Yeah. Most of the time they will occur in posts or videos that we, as again the content creators, put up, and they will get published, posted in the comments, that sort of trying to elicit a response either from us or other people, or they can be sent as direct messages, either on like Messenger or whatever. And whilst digital offers like a number of awesome things, obviously, I do think it's a great place to be. There is the two sides of the coin that if we want the freedom of being able to post freely, whatever we want, in reality, we are very lucky in this country. There is also the other side that actually we need to allow or expect that others will freely post in response to what we put up.
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword of a public forum.
Exactly. And what we're going to say isn't about it being a bad that people are posting, but it's more about like how we should respond as Christians. And what we're going to talk about is predominantly social media and digital presence. There will be a lot of stuff that kind of we talk about or that touch on that can be used for press, and so like public relations with like print media, but also thinking about how you deal with kind of on-site interactions, or the reverse of actually for you, the listener, to think about how you engage on site and how actually that can relate to how you think about your online interactions.
Yeah.
So one of the first things to think about is that it's always worth having a kind of like negative comments, or sort of how we're going to deal with this, part of your digital comms strategy to refer back to if anyone should challenge you on decisions that you've made. Having this in the first place will determine, a cohesive response to anything that does come up in the future, regardless of who's dealing with it, whether that's me as the individual social media manager or the church leader or an administrator. If everyone knows the same message, then you do have a sort of a solid response for the future.
So what you're saying there is if you want to have a part of your comms strategy that is dealing with negative comments, you probably want to have a comms strategy in the first place as well.
Absolutely. Is that a hint to an upcoming episode?
It might be. It might be.
We haven't decided that far yet.
That would require forward planning.
Yes, of course. This doesn't sound like us at all. But it is true that actually, as thinking about, a comm strategy of like it's the branding and all of the fun stuff, actually you need to have those kind of procedures and policies in place, so you know that if someone posts something like this is how we're going to respond. Because again, if you're in the midst of it and you're having someone saying something really upsetting, you don't want to just respond out of anger or frustration. So having that really helps to protect you as a team.
Yeah, 100%.
Thankfully, I've not been on the other end, or I've not been on that point of having to deal very angrily with something, because I think we had, I don't say policies, but I knew that actually I'd need not to respond in anger, which I think actually as Christians, you know, we should lean on, because we're here representing Christ, and that needs to be remembered in what both we post online, within our comms strategy, within our comms calendar, but then actually about how we respond. You know, we've got to love our enemy, and it's hard, but we've got to turn the other cheek. Even though it's hard, we've got to be there to allow people to respond.
And that's a scary responsibility. As much as it's an amazing responsibility,
absolutely,
the fact that generally these are public forums, things that you post there can be screenshotted, and even if you delete them, they can be used against you. So if you are representing the church, that is a big responsibility and something to take seriously. Yeah,
you don't want it to come out that, oh, this church says they're really nice, and then they're responding like this to people. You know, it does the church no favors.
Yeah, for sure.
So though like negative comments can go from slightly amusing tongue-in-cheek, you know, a little bit too far than Christian memes, which I find funny, but you know, you can kind of take it as a bit of banter. It can also go to actually some horrifically offensive, dark, deep stuff. And it's sort of understanding that there is a range. It's not just kind of one type of post.
Yeah.
So whilst the latter are cause for concern, at the end of the day, you do also need to remember that that is someone posting to you. It is not you posting something publicly from your church account. That is a whole different thing we should be talking about. But, you know, comments, trolling, negative comments, actually that is no reflection on you. So even if they do come up, don't panic that this is something we need to delete or whatever straight away. Actually, it's someone else in response to you. So kind of don't stress too much.
Yeah, it's a question of source, isn't it? And actually, there's a world of difference between you posting it or putting it on your website as a "Thus saith our church" to someone who posts it and mentions your church. You know, even if that is public, that's not what your church is saying. So you have a responsibility to moderate it. And that's obviously something we're going to look at what that actually means. But you don't have a responsibility to censor it, or, you know, that's not your voice that's saying that. Or panicking that someone said this, that, or person A said this, the public will think that that is what we meant, but it's not, because actually that's person A saying that about or to you. So to help us kind of work out what type of response is required, let's understand the kind of the different types of commentators out there, because I think I found these definitions on an article on Church Juice, so I can't take credit for them, but actually they're a really great explanation as to like how to break it down and actually have a bit of an idea of who the type of person is and what their motivation of it is, because again, I think it's understanding what their motivation is behind the post as to how you should respond. So number one is trolls. This is something that a bit of a bugbear for me. I find probably more in the Christian world, we use the word trolls interchangeably with online bullies. And obviously online bullying and harassment is terrible, but they're not the same thing, are they?
No, and like obviously Wikipedia is not the be all and end all for definitions, but the Wikipedia definition for trolling is a person who's intentionally sows discord on the internet by starting arguments or upsetting people that, and I'm adding this, that actually probably they have no real reason to do it. They have no relation or
they're stirring for the sake of it.
Exactly. And it doesn't happen sort of person. I'm trying not to give specific names because I don't want to accuse anyone of being trolling. So we're just going to person A. It's not that person A finds church one and just wants to I'm going to find out this church and just troll them for the sake of it. It probably will, a lot of it, come from either being targeted for an ad, or if it's like a post that's gone out and has had a load of hits and stuff, and or is reaching a large amount of people, that then they kind of like see it, and it's only really because they've seen it that they kind of respond to it.
Yeah.
Typically saying something hurtful along the lines of, you know, what a bunch of idiots for not knowing, you know, they're following a stupid cult. Something, you know, that is quite hurtful to us who believe that, you know, our faith is something hugely impactful and important and vital to our existence. So those sorts of points can be quite hurtful.
Yeah, we can take it sort of as a personal insult or a personal attack, but like you say, it's not usually not targeted. It is as much out of boredom as anything else, and wanting to just stir the pot and get a reaction. And if you react, then they'll try to post back to get another reaction. That the point you make about it being in response to an ad or a targeted post is really helpful as well. I think that's what I've seen a lot of recently, where churches have been dipping their toe in the water with paid promotion on their social media content, which is obviously a massive topic that we can cover on a different occasion. But being aware that the people that are seeing that content, if you're paying for them to see it, may not want to see it. And so you may be more likely to get this sort of reaction from essentially strangers. As much as you want to reach those strangers, they don't always want to be reached.
Yeah, and appreciating that angle of it is, I think, helps with giving a bit of compassion. But another one, actually, I just thought that has nothing really to do with church, but where you do see a lot of trolling, are like the local community groups, or thinking about the local newspaper or the regional newspaper when I was in Plymouth, and they would post an article or something, or get the local Facebook groups, people post something about something that maybe isn't bad, or just maybe is a bit, can I say bitchy? Like, have we, is that allowed on here? But that are a bit kind of like, rah, 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 rah. And that's then when you get people trolling, going, oh, it's really stupid that this is happening. Or like, so say it's something about a church. Okay, let's be optimistic. A church is going to put out something in the newspaper saying we're going to feed 150 families over Christmas with our like church food bank or something. That's lovely. Either posted on the news outlet or local Facebook group, there's bound to be people posting saying, yeah, well, what are they doing for the rest of the year? Or, oh, well,
what about the 300?
Yeah, or what about, like, why don't they just not spend money on their stupid roof? Or, you know, then going even more hurtful about things that have happened within certain denominations that is absolutely horrific. And, you know, people bringing totally unrelated incidences that happen and bring it in. And again, then that's for then the public to see, that's for the churchgoers to see, that's for the church staff to see. And it's uncalled for and unnecessary. Full stop, people shouldn't do it.
But again, it's a reality of the online world. So,
do you have anything else to add on?
No, I think we've covered trolls. It's a reality of the online world. We need to be aware of it, but not take it too personally.
Yes, and that's a nice tone to end it on. So number 2 of the types of people, you've got those who need to be heard. So I'm going to call this person Picky Peter. No hate on Peters or anything, but let's just make it a bit fun. So these people are likely to be part of your church family or attend something on, you know, that happens on site, but have something to complain about. And really, you should, if you're going to complain about it, just get in touch with your church leader or, you know, someone on leadership. But they just feel they've got to put it up online. And it is helpful, you know, it is useful feedback, kind of, and often comes from a place of frustration at the situation rather than hate and outwardly kind of trying to sow discourse. But it's often actually kind of like not dealt with in a very helpful way, in that they are putting it publicly rather than going, actually, can I come and deal with this problem directly? So could be something sort of posted on a Facebook page or on a live stream are going, you keep saying there's a children's group, but when we turn up, there isn't anything available. Well, how does that help by posting on there? Just get in touch with the minister, get in touch with, the administrator or someone, just to tell them that this is the situation, and it can be resolved. Because actually, if you're posting something online and it isn't seen or it's not dealt with, the feedback doesn't go along and nothing's actually then resolved in the end to it.
Yeah, I think it's that thing of dealing with things between two people, and then if you need to involve people, doing that more, and doing things in the right way. So these people may have entirely valid complaints. It may be that they're actually not in such a good place, and that that doesn't mean that they don't need to be heard, but perhaps it's more of a case that these people need to be listened to. Whether that's because they feel that they're not being listened to, or whether there are other reasons they're not being heard, and so they're wanting to be heard on a wider audience in a bit more of perhaps an attention-seeking way. So it's not the healthiest way to do it, but we still need to take on board what they're saying and probably take it offline and deal with it in the right way.
Yeah, as you say, it probably is the most useful out of the three because it is constructive to the church, but it's just not the best way to deal with it.
I'd probably say, in my experience, that it's in larger churches you're going to be more likely to see this. Perhaps that's because there's more potential to feel like you're not being heard. Perhaps because the sort of social stigma of, if you were to post something online and actually you go to church and there's 20 or 30 other people there, everyone else is going to have seen that, and there's more chance that they're going to call you out on that it wasn't the best thing to do, maybe.
So that's
not to say it doesn't happen in small churches, but something to be aware of.
Yeah, definitely. So then the other definition are, again, I didn't come up with this title, but I do quite like it, the unconscientious objectors. So the people who are quite kind of like smart and critical thinkers, and they just want to object and argue and complain and cause a bit of a ruckus, more to be difficult than to be hurtful, because they kind of want a response out of you because they want to argue with you. So this is a really awful example, but it's kind of, they're the ones who go like, stupid church doesn't serve almond milk with its coffees. So what? Like, we're not going to serve almond milk. Like, we all want lattes and, I'll give you a flat white for your coffee and stuff. Like, that's not a helpful comment. It's not necessarily hurtful. It's just annoying. Or even those people that then sort of, it's not about arguing, or it's not about suggesting that you're in a cult or something, but sort of might argue kind of like they have a vague theological understanding and they're able to kind of like antagonize in a smart way.
So I suppose this isn't someone who's looking to be helpful with their comments, which for those that need to be heard, the previous people we talk about, we'll give them the benefit of the doubt and say, actually, maybe they do want to be helpful, they're just not going about it in the right way. These are people who aren't looking to be helpful, but are disagreeing with you. And it could be that they disagree with your church's stance on something. And again, not necessarily the best way to engage with it on a public forum. But it becomes one of those things where we don't expect everyone to agree with us. But by having those conversations in the public forum, it just makes everything more heated. It's not necessarily a good idea. So we'll react to these people in a different way. Which I guess leads us nicely on to, with these different types of people, these different types of negative comments, what do we do with them?
So the first thing really...
That was you panicking, wasn't it?
It was me panicking. I should have done the "don't panic, Mr. Mannering." So the first thing is not to panic. Again, like, as we said already, this doesn't reflect on you. It reflects on how you respond to it. But the posts themselves are nothing to do with you in the basics of senses. So really sort of like just try and take a moment before you go, I've got to respond, kind of thing. Often the first thing that people see, they go, oh, it's a negative comment, I've got to delete it, I've got to get rid of it, like all the evidence has got to go. Actually, really, that isn't always the case. If it's spam or like bots going, you can make £1 million for your building, or you know, I found this new way to use cryptocurrency, try this, delete that, because that's, I like, weirdly, I get a lot of them on Instagram, which is really odd. Not so much on Facebook, but you know, if it's spam like that, delete it, and actually even try and block them, because otherwise you just get lots more. That's fine to like immediately delete and block. If it's offensive, so again, actually, if it's quite
targeted harassment,
yes,
mean,
that actually is offensive and a huge cause for concern, you can report them. And actually, Twitter's really good at, well, actually they're all, it depends, but it is always good to report the accounts and the posts if it is actually very, very upsetting.
Yeah, I mean, it's very, very clearly the case if something is illegal and what they're saying is actually against the law.
Yeah, so that definitely. And I mean, don't go too deep into it, but actually if you recognize them as someone local, or you know, that you do know them from your area or something, always worth to just have a note of it. I don't want to say like report it, but you know, if your minister or someone does have a relationship with like a local police officer or something like that, it's always worth kind of just bearing that in mind, because there is the chance that these aren't isolated incidences.
Yeah, I think that's fair, especially when you notice a pattern.
Yeah.
At that point, you start to think, what do I need to do about this? Yeah.
Absolutely. And, you know, safety of church members or church leadership. So, you know, if it is really bad, bear that in mind. On Facebook, you can hide comments, actually, if it's not like really offensive, but it's just actually a little bit unhelpful. So that's always a good thing to do. And especially if you aren't sure, you could hide it, deal with it, and then either, you know, make it public again if you need to put a public response to it, or delete it if necessary. So I don't want to say delete shouldn't be your first instinct, but actually it's sort of your first, right, this is how do we deal with it, but it shouldn't be your automatic of we have to delete everything.
Yeah, because I think that can come across as censoring and can make people more angry if they feel that anything that you disagree with is just shut down as you're not allowed to have a voice here.
Yeah, no, definitely. And actually it can be more helpful to engage with someone, you know, as you say, rather than just censoring them, is sort of asking a question to their comment, complaint, whatever they've said. So, you know, so whilst there are some who want to be difficult, complain just because they want to, there are often those who are just hurting. And, you know, we're in a broken world. There's so many people are in difficult places for many different reasons, and they are just lashing out and just need someone or something. Actually taking the time and the opportunity to engage with them and comment back, you know, pray for them. Actually, that can be a really valuable way of sort of slightly diffusing a situation, or even, I say making it better, but actually going, no, look, we believe there is a way that we can help you through this.
And I think, you know, we've listed out some different examples or different types of people that might be commenting. And it's helpful to try and identify where that comment's coming from. But we're not always going to know 100%. And actually something that looks like a stirring troll-like comment could be entirely genuine, coming from a good place. And so to shut someone down when they're asking a genuine question could be crushing. We need to be really careful with that. And it's a balancing act. But I think where possible, we need to give people the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
And sure, it might backfire and hurt us a little bit or make us look stupid, but at least we're trying to do the loving thing, and that will be clear to those that are watching, you know, that are seeing the conversation unfold.
Exactly. And, you know, like, again, for those who need to be heard, so actually those who are kind of giving something constructive, again, engaging is important, because it lets them know that you've heard them, and actually you're going to deal with it appropriately. So whether that is just responding something back, you know, making an action, making a change, again, like you said, if that sort of benefit of the doubt of actually they're not meaning this maliciously, they're not sort of complaining because they want to complain. Actually, it was a real pain point for them in their experience of church. This might actually be a really helpful thing if we did make these changes.
But I suppose there's also, if you are willing to make those changes, that doesn't mean that you have to say straight away on social media, we're going to do it. You know, it can be, I think a key thing here is there are times when you, as the volunteer who's running social media, may be better off taking it, not to say higher, but taking it to the church leadership, or taking it to sort of trusted friends or others who are in social media or church comms. There's plenty of Facebook groups and communities of support for that sort of thing. And they're the sorts of people that we want to be pointing to as a really good resource. Yeah, just to get some input on what's the wisest thing to do in this situation, because it's very hard to give black and white advice about when this comment comes in, you should do this, because we don't know what's behind the comments. We don't know the individual situations.
No, exactly. And often, as you said, like it can't just be helpful to put thanks for this, we'll pass it on, or we'll deal with it, or at least acknowledging that you've seen it and it will be kind of dealt with.
Giving a next step, but at the same time not being like the customer support account on Twitter, which is like, oh, really sorry to hear that. Email us at inquiries@company.com. That isn't necessarily a helpful response, because it comes across as just copied and pasted, because it probably is, rather than sensitive. And so still handling it on a one-on-one basis, but saying, let's take this further offline or not in public.
No, exactly. And, so wherever possible, respond to the comments, but actually, can you talk further? So if it is someone sort of local, is there a way that you could say, we'd love to hear more about your problems, issues, concerns, come for a coffee. We'd love to chat with you further. Because actually, again, if they're a person in a difficult place or going through something, actually, maybe they just do need someone to listen to, where they can vent to. And actually it might be the start of something, the start of something for them, if they experience the church being not necessarily receptive to their concerns, but at least just listening to them. So wherever you can, if that works, chat to them, invite them for coffee or something, or chat to them online. Can you direct message them? Could you invite them to church? It's really difficult to find an exact kind of the type of comment where you'd exactly say this, but you sort of, could you use it to invite them, of saying, join us on Sunday to see for yourself. If someone's saying, oh, you're a bunch of old people, something, join us for Sunday, we'd love to see you, something like that. Because again, you're inviting them, but you're not sort of sounding really like, and that's not a word, but you know what I mean? It doesn't sound sort of overly clingy. You're being or sort of going, well, we don't want to talk to you. You're sounding quite open and inviting.
It's wanting to bring them in rather than to push them away.
Exactly. Yeah. Or if it's in some case, if someone says, oh, well, this was a really stupid church because, I don't know, they're still using an organ.
I think it's really helpful, the voice that you're doing. I think it puts me right in the mind of the person who's commenting online.
I'm gonna have to do voices for all of the different people now, aren't I? To say that something like, actually, well, you're not gonna be changed. If someone's complaining because you're still using an organ, like you're like, well, we're not going to change it anytime soon necessarily. Or actually, this is the way we worship. We're not going to get lights and electric things and stuff like that. You just comment and say, really sorry that we're not the right church for you. I hope you find a church in your area that's better suited to you. You're kind of responding rather than aggro. You're wishing them the best of finding a church. You're still kind of encouraging them to go to church, but you're not being like, I'm trying to think of like a Christian response to it, but you're not sort of saying, well, whatever, we don't want to see you again.
And you're not saying that our way is right, everyone else is wrong,
exactly,
and therefore you are also wrong, but you're saying we're not the best fit, but we still want you to find out more about Jesus, so go to somewhere where you feel that you might fit in better.
Exactly.
I think there are also situations as well where actually silence is the wisest response. Especially this can be the case on local Facebook groups or on a post which maybe is a little bit controversial and has had a number of comments, where having a response that you put out too quickly, maybe it's hastily written or just a little bit unwise, can actually add fuel to the fire. Rather than calming things down, which you're trying to do, it can just result in more and more comments and the negativity spreading, because it's then being seen by more people, more that comment on it.
Yeah.
So I think if there are these situations where it is kicking off a little bit, and you do feel that you need to make a response, waiting for things to die down can be okay. And putting out something along the lines of a statement or a blog post might actually be a better way of handling it, because it takes the ball back into your court and you say, this is what the church is saying in response to this situation. And it's a little bit more of a, in the nicest way possible, a full stop, rather than saying, right, let's keep the conversation going and adding to this negativity because I'm going to say this and then you're going to say that and then we'll just keep going. I would say that when you do want to put out more of an official statement or an official response like that, that perhaps that's where you bring in some outside support in terms of other churches that you trust. Definitely, as I've said before, talking to your church leadership, but it might be that they want to talk to other church leaders and get their input on it as well. Because something that we're probably going to end up banging on about in future episodes, but communication is a two-way street. And so it's not just what you're saying, but it's how people are receiving it. What are they hearing? So you can write something with the best intentions, but if it comes across as sarcastic or hurtful or insincere, then it's not a good thing to put out. So getting that guidance can really help get us outside of our echo chamber.
Yeah. So what we've just covered isn't a instruction and a very clear to follow formula, because it is so dependent on who the person is, what their motivation of posting, and also actually what they are posting.
Yeah.
So it's really tricky to say this is exactly what you should do. Hopefully this has given you a bit of clarity on where you need to be thinking, but really your responses need to come from a place of time, reflection, wisdom, prayer, and talking to other people, whether that is kind of if you've got some comms peers that you kind of can share this with, or leadership. Actually, just don't deal with a response on your own, purely of just making sure that how you're responding is the right way. But as well as thinking as to how you respond to social media responses, so whether that's Facebook or a YouTube video or something, it is also worth occasionally, I wouldn't say doing it too often, reviewing comments or posts made about your church. So even if that's about just Googling your church and not looking up your places on those platforms, but to see what people have written about you, or things like Google review, are you actually on there? Do you own that, like Google My Business part for your church or business or charity, where actually people can give feedback that often, again, maybe it's difficult for you to respond, but actually you can take on the feedback that's given. Again, as I've said already, of like local news or local community Facebook pages, if there's been something where you've been posted about, it is always worth just kind of reading through them, taking it slightly objectively, and trying not to take it all to heart. It can be upsetting, but they can offer real insights into opportunities to improve upon. We've said it several times already, but we're going to say it again. Take a moment out. Don't just sort of knee-jerk response and sort of keyboard warrior.
Breathe.
Take a few moments, make a drink. Have you got someone to talk to? Again, there needs to be in the, in your strategy of going, actually, these are the people we will share it with. These are the people that we will want to refer to if a more serious response is required. Draft a response, especially as Joe said, if it's something bigger where a statement or a blog post or something needs to be created, draft a response, but have others read it. Have someone who's either not involved with your church directly, but someone that you can trust who can, give you some objective and practical advice, but equally understands the nature of where you are. At the same time, own it. If it's something about like, well, you don't have the childcare when I turn up, okay, that is on you. You can't blame that on someone else. If you did mess up, or if it's something that you can change, say, we're really sorry. We realize that this is something we've, failed on, but actually this is something that we can change.
Something we can do better.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks for your feedback. We will make a change. Say sorry, but make the changes then. And don't just say it and then don't do it. you remember that it does show authenticity and openness to respond in that way. But equally, if those comments come up, if you're not deleting everything, as you said already, Joe, of like, actually, if you're not shutting it down all the time and sort of really controlling what people are saying, actually, if people see that there was a comment that said something, there was only child groups or something, and then actually you say, look, we've really heard what people are saying, we're now going to make an effort on this, and now your child groups are really growing. People will respond to that in a really positive way, because they see, oh, these Christian people, these church people, they're not all snobby and don't want to listen to our feedback. And really do a voice for that, but actually they did listen to us, and it was okay. They don't hate us now when we turn up.
And hopefully they're practicing what they're preaching.
Exactly. So I think actually, it does show real positivity and opportunity for growth if there are problems that can be resolved and that are then resolved upon. So remember that you're representing the body of Christ in how you respond. So show openness, show vulnerability, show love and forgiveness. So if someone is being a bit difficult, show a bit of graciousness to them. And remember that it's an opportunity to reach new people in a new way that we wouldn't really, because that's what digital allows us. So I've got a really good story that he must have told me quite a while ago, but it really moved me, and it's something that I really remember. So I have a friend, Jason, who works at an awesome church in Exeter, and they've been pioneering digital for forever. And I love him so much for all the awesome things he inspires me to do. And he said to me one time, so they did a lot of, I think they called them online pastors. So whilst they were live streaming, and they were doing it long before COVID, they had online pastors who were engaging with people, offering prayer, offering an opportunity to connect, and trying to not solve people's problems, but, actually be there in the same way that we would if we were meeting on site. They had one person that kept commenting, being very difficult and hurtful, but the online pastors persisted in showing love and kindness to this guy, I think it was, and turns out he was having a problem of some sorts. They prayed for him, they prayed with him, and actually he sort of went, oh, sorry, you're not the ones I'm angry at. And actually, not that he was came to the Lord immediately, but actually they helped him break down some walls, some barriers, some problems that were up. Whereas if they'd have just gone, no, we're deleting that comment, actually he could have been in a lot worse place afterwards. So I really came away from Jason telling me this story of actually there can be real power in engaging with those difficult people, because we can see real change happen.
Yeah. So all of these negative comments that we've talked about, the negative examples that we might hear about, because that's just what we do, right? We focus on the negative rather than the positive. But actually, they're opportunities for us, and indeed for God to use it for good things to come out of it. So to sum up, I'll say don't be scared off. Some of the things that we've talked about can feel quite dramatic, and the negativity that can come with these comments, it is a reality of the online world, and not least when so often the message that we want to put across from the Bible is quite countercultural and different to what those around us think. But as we keep banging on about, the more you're thinking through how to sensitively communicate with your audience and what you're wanting to communicate, hopefully the less likely it is that these situations will happen. And we want to encourage you to approach this with confidence, whilst at the same time, with humility, asking God's help to give you the words to be wise, to be peaceful in your communications. And in all of this, to thank God for the privilege that it is to use modern communication methods to proclaim his truth and share his love with those around us.